I gave him a name because up until this point, he didn't have a name. He wasn't even a person. Harold has been my anxiety. Harold's not a real person. But 2 months ago, I started to talk to my anxiety and I named it Harold. Hey, healthcare providers, you're listening to the Burnout to Lit Up podcast. Hosted by myself, Erica, and my husband, Michael, we're an OTPT team that understands the healthcare industry's got some serious issues.
Inspired by our own experience with burnout, we've made it our mission and passion to help you navigate your career in healthcare by cultivating wellness, growing both personally and professionally, and advocating for a better workplace.
Whether you are a clinician or manager, new grad or seasoned vet, join us each week as we share interviews, research, stories, and strategies that will give you the tools to go from burnt out to your most lit up self.
Let's dive in.
So it's darker earlier now, and it always freaks me out at first.
Yeah, it sucks getting out of work and it's dark outside.
No, but I love waking up early and there's light.
Yeah.
It helps you wake up better.
Yeah, it does help. I have hard enough time.
You're always a slug in the morning.
I'm like a bear coming out of hibernation every day.
Oh my God, that bear in Glacier National Park.
Yeah, we follow Glacier National Park's Facebook page.
Yeah.
And in the springtime, it's like they had a live webcam of this bear in a tree. And he was like emerging from hibernation. It took him like weeks.
Yeah, he was one sleepy bear that did not want to wake up. And this webcam was hilarious. I mean, so this bear was like poking his head out of a hole. One time his foot or his butt was out of the hole. Yeah,
just his butt one day. Like he like inverted himself somehow. And like that's how he laid for a day or two.
That's pretty much you. You are a bear in hibernation.
Yeah.
I'm like, I hear the alarm. So I just hit snooze once. I build that in my system in the morning. I hit snooze once. And I have built myself up to wake up earlier. Like I'm waking up at 6:30, 6:35. And it's really hard for me. I'm not like one of those 5 a.m. people, you know?
Right.
Like,
yeah, I mean, it's better now so that you can work in daytime instead of with your cell phone flashlight while I try to sleep.
Yeah, living in a studio with a significant other when you're trying to have your own privacy is a little hard. Like my meditation mornings, my little ritual in the mornings before the daylight saving times, I would wake up and it was super dark and I'd have my little flashlight so I can journal. And Mike's like, yep, trying to finish sleeping for the last 30 minutes. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I have to do my morning routine.
Yeah. I need like a good 30. I don't know why we're talking about sleep.
Well, I love sleep.
I mean, yeah.
You love it too.
Let's talk about anxiety because that's what today's episode's about.
Yeah, well, I talk all about anxiety in the episode, but I wanted to finish a thought I had about the morning. Wait, do you have something to say about the morning first?
Nope.
It's like really. Your least favorite.
Yeah.
You're more like a night person, I think.
Definitely. Yeah, I can usually stay up as late as needed. But
are you more of a wolf, you think?
What's the wolf? I thought it was a bear that I was.
No, there's 4 chronotypes. So a lion is the early morning 5 a.m. riser. The bear is 50% of the population. They go with the sun's rhythm. I think, well, okay, I'll just finish them. And then a wolf is like the late night creative type that thrives working later. And then the dolphin is a person that has insomnia. I think you're a bear-wolf hybrid, and I'm a lion-bear hybrid.
Yeah, I don't have insomnia, so I'm definitely not a dolphin.
You're not a dolphin. You don't have a dolphin personality either. We have to do an episode on this. I just made a mental note.
That would be good. Yeah, like have a sleep expert on or something.
Oh my God, I would love Dr. Michael Bruce to be on. He wrote The Power of One. He's baller.
Balling hard.
Yeah. But
hard on sleep.
He's a sleep doctor and he talks about chronotypes and I'm fascinated by them. I'll go into that in another episode. I have all these mental notes for episodes. So 2019 is going to be super lit.
It's going to be our year, for real.
It is going to be our year. I feel it. It's going to be your year too. I'm talking to you.
You, the Bolu listener.
Yeah, the person that you are. 2019, When people say that, like they say that
2019, you mean?
2019. Here we go. Really?
How do you
Okay.
say the year that was right before the year 2000?
1999.
Right. So how do you say?
How do you say the year 2000? 2000?
No, because that's silly.
That's silly, but okay, 2019.
So you say 1999, but then you say 2019. Doesn't make sense. You totally flipped.
2019. Mike, we have little differences in our language. I say get down from the car, and you say get out of the car.
Mm-hmm.
Get down. Right?
Well, yeah, but the car isn't high up. Your like trajectory. Like you remember how like we learned about like vectors in physics. You know, like
That was a long
vectors.
time ago.
It was like the arrows. So, like you draw like an arrow like going horizontally, and then an arrow going like a tinier arrow going down. It's like there's like a net vector that's like more out of the car than like down from the car.
I know vectors. I took physics.
You took physics too.
In high school, I didn't. Guess what? For OTs, you didn't have to. Well, you did, but I took kinesiology instead. So I haven't taken physics since high school. Mother.
Good for you. It was terrible. Physics was hard.
Did you have
Especially physics 2. Physics 2 was way hard, and it had no application whatsoever to physical therapy. So silly.
Yeah. Well, quick question. Did you have to take orgo?
So for some physical therapy schools, they do require organic chemistry, but the one that I went to did not. So I was super stoked about that. I actually was in organic chemistry for like maybe a week or two, and I was like, I'm going to get messed up by this course. So I dropped it real quick. It was just way over my head. It was like, holy crap, I'm going to get owned.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you would have, but when I was in college, I was pretty with it. I didn't have a social life, so I dedicated myself to my studies.
You're a really good studier, though. It's like you can memorize things.
I think I would have done good. I think I would have done well in orgo. I never had to take it, but I heard people just crying about it, and then I'm like, well, I
knew right away. I was like, nope.
Nope.
I'm not going to be able to do this and keep my GPA up. Heck no.
No, I got a letter. I don't want to brag. This is like a humble brag, but I got a letter from...
I'm so good at school.
I'm so good at school.
I got a letter from one of my old history professors at FIU. This guy looks like he taught dinosaurs. He was really old. He wore a bow tie. He was bald. And he taught history. It was like one of those classes, those humanity classes you have to take in college. Mm-hmm. And this class could have been torture. You had to read the Iliad and the Odyssey, and you had to he had a rule, and this rule has changed my life, by the way. This
hit me.
I don't think you're ready for this rule.
Ready for this jelly.
I don't think you're ready for this jelly. No?
That's
Okay.
Beyonce for you youngins out there.
People know. Everyone knows Beyonce. This rule was that he didn't allow you to write a paper with the word is or was. You had to, if you were going to write, this is a challenging book, you had to think of, this book challenged me. You had to rewrite. He did not allow is, was.
Wow, that's hard.
He didn't allow those in papers at all. So it took me double, triple the time to write papers for him.
They were probably epic papers, though, weren't they?
Well, the thing is that he thought that is very passive, and he wanted you to have enriched writing, and that has taught me not just someone that I blog casually, with every episode that we do here, there's a blog associated with it. And I also write freebies.
Blog posts.
Yeah, blog posts. And I also write blogs just outside of the podcast. But anyway, even though it's casual, I still remember that rule. And throughout life, in grad school, anything I've done that requires serious writing, like proposals and stuff, I've remembered that rule. And I think it's just made me a better writer and a more critical thinker. So apply that rule when you're writing something, and it forces you not to be lazy.
Yeah.
With your writing.
Sure. Sounds like a good method.
A good method. Yeah, I thought so. And he wrote me a letter. He wrote me an email through my college email at the time, and he said, I kid you not, out of all my years of teaching, you were one of my highest performing students.
Wow, how nice.
I know.
And I have to edit all your copy.
Well, because I'm not writing papers to turn in. I'm just writing for the blog. But I do put a lot of heart into my blogs, but you are a good editor. So I just appreciate you editing. You know, I'm not spending hours trying to write.
CFO, editor.
I'm not trying to write
website designer.
Listen.
Creative director.
Okay.
Better looking.
Cállate. Excuse me? You know I'm better looking.
Yeah, you're right.
But what was I gonna say? I'm not trying to spend hours or write a summary on the Iliad nowadays. So,
yeah.
But anyway,
Greeks, ships, gods,
war,
end of story.
Okay, no, but really quick because I have to get this off my mind, off my chest. Just before we go into the episode, we were talking about mornings, and I wanted to hit on something just super quick. If you don't have a successful morning routine, there's something wrong with you. I know a lot of people swear by morning routines. I mean, I do.
I swear during mornings.
You swear during mornings, of course. I see that. We're very different. Joke. Oh my God, you have dad jokes.
Mad dad jokes
up your sleeve all the time. But I just wanted to point that out. I talk about morning routines a lot, and I might do, again, mental note, another episode on the power of routine, but it doesn't have, your routines have to give you strength, and they don't have to look like mine or someone else's. So don't beat yourself up that you're not getting up at 5 a.m. and spending an hour running and journaling and meditating before you start your day, because not everyone thrives in the morning. Mike doesn't. He and I do a little like nightly routine together, and that's what powers him up. So that's just been on my mind because I see people like feel bad on social media that their routine doesn't look like someone else's, but you're not someone else. You can better your routine, but maybe your morning routine is just brushing your teeth and taking a shower and praying in the shower or whatever. Or your night routine, you have more of your energy to dedicate to creating something that is replenishing. So just don't feel bad. I had to say that. We just got really sidetracked, but
despite what you may think, this episode is about anxiety. So we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I share it all in the episode. I don't need to say anything here about it. Just my journey with anxiety. I go into why it's important to share and all that stuff. So you're going to take a lot from this episode if you have anxiety, or if you know someone struggling with anxiety, please share that episode with them, and happy listening.
So actually one more quick thing, super quick. We just finished setting up our Patreon page. So for those of you who may not know what Patreon is, it's patreon.com/burntouttolitup. So basically what Patreon is it's an opportunity for fans of different content creators to donate money to their favorite causes in exchange for awesome goodies that those content creators will offer, right? So for example, on our Patreon page, we're actually offering early access to episodes, exclusive episodes, chance to be on the podcast, some other awesome goodies. So if you go to the page, it'll show, what's offered. Basically, Patreon's awesome because it gives an opportunity for content creators like us to raise a little bit of money. If you guys are feeling like you're benefiting from the podcast, you're feeling a little generous, we would really appreciate it if you would at least consider going over to the Patreon page and giving it a look and seeing if you can find it in your hearts, maybe for like $1 donation or something like that. It helps us run the podcast. There's equipment we want to buy. There's podcast hosting we have to pay for. There's software. There's things like that. Ultimately, we want to have more time to do this full time. Like we want to we want this to be our jobs. We want to give content to you guys full time, and the podcast is always going to be free. We're never going to make you pay for it. So if you're you're feeling like you want to give it a potential donation, that would be really helpful. If not, no big deal. You can keep listening, and it's always going to be free, and we're always going to try to serve you guys. So give it a look. It's Patreon, patreon.com/burntouttolitup. Check it out, and thanks for listening. Enjoy the episode.
I have battled with anxiety since I was 16 years old. And for the greater part of that journey, I have let it get the best of me. Throughout high school, college, grad school, and as an occupational therapist, and in between all of that. It has only been in this last year on my journey to self-discovery, that I have been shifting completely. And in this evolution of shifting, I have found a tool to help me relate to my anxiety in a completely different way than I ever have done before. And this tool has given me my power back. So before I go on, I want to say that obviously this isn't medical advice. So always consult with your doctor or licensed healthcare professional when trying something new or taking any advice, whether that's physical or mental health or anything of that nature. This is just me sharing my story, sharing what has worked for me, and it's just another tool in the toolkit. And this tool actually isn't just another tool, because it has changed everything for me completely. So it's a big tool, small tool, yet big in so many ways and so powerful. So this episode is a little raw because I'm going to just share my story and my journey, which I know is what you want to hear. Because although you come to this podcast for education and interviews and all those amazing things, I can't hide behind those things all the time. I'm learning more and more, especially like I mentioned, that this year is the year of discovering who I am, really who I am. I am also discovering that sharing the ugliest parts of my journey is what is so needed to help people. That's why I started this podcast. So I'm a little nervous to share this, and I shared this actually a little bit on one of my Instagram lives last week. I'm not even sure if anyone really watched it, but I did also make a post about it. So if you do follow me on joy.energy.time on Instagram, then you probably saw this post. But whatever, I'm going to share my story. Here I go. So in high school, I met a guy, a friend. Don't worry, we were never romantic. His name is Harold. Met him in high school and we became just good friends. We would hang out a lot. We got each other. We were very similar. He had a very similar mindset like I did. And we developed a good friendship. Before I go on, I have a question for you. Have you ever had a friendship or been in a relationship of any sort where you knew it was toxic, it wasn't good for you, maybe someone was enabling you or you were an enabler, and it was a negative relationship, a toxic relationship, but nevertheless you stayed? That can vary vastly from something that might seem more harmless to all the way to abusive, when you're in a relationship that's toxic to any degree. But anyway, that was how our relationship was. It was toxic, even though I wouldn't have described it that way, because we enabled each other in many ways. We were both afraid of everything. We were both afraid to be out of our comfort zone. We were both afraid to even speak to other people. I think I was, that, I don't know if you've heard of this, but I've heard of this across other podcasts and blogs, and the theory that from the time you're born, from 0 to 7 years old, that time you are a sponge and you absorb everything. Those experiences form the basis of who you are from 0 to 7 years old. So Harold and I enabled each other to, again, play it small, to really let our fears prevent us from speaking up in class or doing anything that may excite us, but we're scared of doing it because when I was really young, I was conditioned in my environment, whether I wanted to admit it or not. Again, I was 5 years old, 6 years old. I wasn't really aware of it being a part of making me who I was, but I was afraid to talk. During that time, I developed this fear of talking because I stuttered, so I was made fun of it. So during that period of kindergarten, first grade, I learned that if I talk, I'm laughed at or I'm made fun of. And those memories were ingrained in me and shaped and conditioned the basis of who I became. So in high school, I was so afraid to talk to people, and I developed this social anxiety. Harold was someone that I didn't see as talking to someone else. He was just a really good friend, but we fed off of each other's anxieties, and he was afraid to talk to people too. And during chapel on Fridays, because I went to a Christian school and we had chapel, even deciding who to sit next to sometimes, or who to be around, or being in any sort of social situation at school, it just freaked me out. The breaks that we had breaks around 10 o'clock in the morning, and then we had lunch. I just feared talking to people, making conversation. I used to keep a list. Harold gave me this idea to keep a list of things to talk about, topics. I called it my little topic train. I had it in a notebook, and this was before smartphones. And later on in grad school, I still carried this idea with me, and I had it on my iPhone in grad school. Just because I was so afraid to talk to people and I didn't want to sound stupid or say the wrong thing. So I had a topic train because I was so worried about impressing people. I wanted people to really like me. And this didn't make me feel better. You know, it was a tool I had, but it made me feel so insecure that I needed something like this to talk to people. How loserly am I? So in high school, just maintaining social relationships was difficult, and Harold and I, we went to a concert together. We actually, we went with other people. We went to see Daddy Yankee when he just came out with Gasolina. Oh my God, that's a staple in reggaeton. If you don't know Gasolina, I mean, I don't know what rock you're living under. Even if you don't listen to reggaeton, it's a really famous song. And, needless to say, I had a little panic attack at the concert because I actually was in another toxic friendship with a girl that was not a bully, but she was very alpha and dominant and very decisive. And, I should do this and I should do that. And I was afraid of making her mad at me. And she didn't go to the concert, but all that stress of this friendship that I felt compelled to be in for some reason. When you're in high school, I don't know why. I wasn't strong at all. I had no strength, and I let anxiety and then again this friendship with Harold really just consumed me. So I had no confidence in myself. My confidence came from how much people liked me and how I was viewed, even though I was afraid to interact with people. So I started to have little panic attacks. And then I entered college, where I went from my 50 class size senior class to FIU, that at the time had 38,000 students. Of course, not everyone's on the same campus at once, but to me, that number overwhelmed me. And Harold went to school with me, and we were just so afraid of walking through, oh my God, what's that place in FIU called? The big hallway. All the frats are there, the sororities are there. They have tables, that's where the food court is. I was so afraid to walk through there because Harold was everyone's looking at us. Everyone's judging us. Everyone thinks we're stupid. I'm how could people think we're stupid? They don't even know us. We're just walking through the hallway. But it was these insecurities that consumed us. And during this time, I was in and out of therapy. I was placed on antidepressants towards the end of high school, actually, but not for very long because my side effects were out of control. My nurse practitioner that prescribed me the medication, she said, at one point, you're going to be so afraid of people and interacting that you're not going to leave the house. And so she prescribed me this antidepressant. And that scared me. And that what she said, I thought was my destiny. Wow, this anxiety has really got me. It's got me real good. And so apart from going to therapy, traditional psychotherapy, and having this medication, I realized that, I wasn't sleeping. I was nervous all the time. The medication, the side effects were too much, so they took me off of it. Back to college, I was in college with Harold and still in and out of different therapists. And I understood where the therapists were going with me. They were getting me to reconstruct my reality. Like, are all 38,000 people on campus with you at this one given point of time? No. And so, I would take 2 steps forward, or 1 step forward with my psychologist, and then 2 steps back because I would have my environment that really enabled me to live in anxiety. So my environment that enabled me was Harold. And I actually didn't have many friends in college. I may have talked about this before, but I had no life in college. College is a time where you're supposed to make a lot of friends and go to parties and drink and all that stuff that I never did. Never did once. I really missed out because again, this is another story I think I have shared before on the podcast, with being a dance major and having Harold just not being really supportive of that. And this whole journey of the eating disorder, which I won't go into now, but that's what I had. And during that time, I was in the mindset that this is going to help me achieve my goals so that I can become a dancer. And I'm just using this as a tool, which of course backfired because I developed an eating disorder, from a diet to complete downward spiral. But anyway, throughout this entire journey, Harold is there. I don't change. I stay the same, living out of fear, afraid to talk to people, afraid to walk past people. When I was home alone, that's when I felt safe. I developed such social phobia, and with my stuttering and anxiety, that I was so lost. And then I met one of my best friends now. I met her in college, and she knew I was a lost soul, and she was supportive of me and still is, and one of my best friends, and I love her so much. Hi, Sabrina. But other than that, I still had this bad influence of Harold. And again, I don't see that this is not good for me, that he is just perpetuating my anxious thoughts and my beliefs about myself, which were false, but to me were ever real because they were my beliefs. My beliefs of I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to talk to people. Who would want to be my friend? What do I have to give to people? I'm not interesting. I'm boring. I stutter. I have anxiety. So on. Towards the end of college, I decide, long story short, I don't want to go into the whole dance story, but I decide that I'm going to pursue a stable career. And I love healthcare, always wanted to be a doctor. But I decided to pursue occupational therapy. So I go to, I take all my prereqs. I graduated with the dance major, but 2 weeks later, I was in the OT program in grad school. So I got my master's degree. And Harold was with me. Harold wanted to be an OT as well. He wanted to help people. Also, we both figured OT seems like a really great career choice. So we both enter OT school. And OT school is way different than college. You're with the same cohort all the time. You're wearing the same scrubs. You are with each other in every class, and it's like a little family. What they don't tell you about entering OT school is that you do a lot of group work. So for someone that has social anxiety, is group work a good idea? I remember my first year of grad school, and at this point in the game, I was just a little bit more comfortable with who I was. I was really finding who Erica was a little bit more, but still had these bad influences. I should have broken up with Harold a long time ago. Even though we were just friends, it wasn't a good friendship. So we're doing group work in occupational analysis, and we're going to make a pizza, because in OA, that class, occupational analysis, it's all about looking and analyzing occupations and activities, because that's really what our secret sauce is as OTs. And again, that could be a whole other story. I could do a whole episode on just the power of occupation. But I digress. So in that class, we're making a pizza in a group project, and we're analyzing the steps, all the different requirements it takes to make a pizza, the social requirements, the cognitive requirements. It's a group project. And I start freaking out. I have to go outside. I have to leave the room. I started to have a panic attack. And Harold's like, oh my God, can you believe we have to be in a group? We have to do group work. Like, this is grad school. Why do we have to do group work? And he's freaking out with me, and I'm panicking. I can't breathe. Like, panic attacks always happened in social situations. And they weren't as frequent. I started to get them in high school, like I said, in that first time was in that Daddy Yankee concert. I laugh because I love Daddy Yankee. But anyway, I had panic attacks. I still had them. And Harold wasn't helpful, because he was like, oh my God, there's so many people in the group and everyone has different opinions. I'm like, oh my God, I know. Like, one person wants to make the pizza this way and the other one wants to make it this way, and I don't know what to do. And I'm really quiet. I'm just going to follow along, and I can't make any decisions. So like, that was my way of overcoming anxiety. It was not overcoming it, was just freaking out more and more and more. So now I start to go again to see someone, but this time I go to the anxiety clinic, and it's a graduate student that is completing her hours to graduate, and she is my psychologist, or she is I don't know what program. I don't know if she was in her clinical PhD or not, but I had a student, and I think the sessions were recorded and they were reviewed by her supervisor, and I start seeing her about anxiety. And I'm here again talking to someone, and I feel ashamed. Like, oh, I'm here again talking to someone. Like, why can't I get better? Why do I still have this anxiety? And I'm not sure what's going on. All I know is that I live in this state of anxiety. In grad school, I met my husband. I met some incredible people. And I started to realize that, Harold and I grew a little bit distant. Even though he was still a friend, we weren't hanging out all the time. And I really found myself in making these relationships with these people. With my husband, I started dating him and making relationships with the girls in my class. And the more, now it was a 2.5-year program. So the closer I grew to these people, I realized that maybe Harold is like, he's not giving me what these people are giving me. These people are giving me confidence in myself. Like, they like me for who I am. And I don't have to have a topic train or be impressive. I can just be myself. So I graduate with my master's in OT, and I'm ready to conquer the world as an OT. Lo and behold, my first job out of school, they hired 2 OTs right off the bat. They hired me and Harold, because they wanted a male OT as well, and they had someone just left. So they were looking to fill a certain position. So we both started to work at the same place. And let me just say that the 2.5 years, was it 2.5 years? Yes, the first 2.5 years as an OT, I had to really think about, okay, like what month, what year. I had my worst relationship with Harold. And I also realized I grew like, okay, let me backtrack. The social anxiety I had was diminishing, but now my general anxiety and fear of just going to work perpetuated. It was this cycle. And it wasn't just having to work with Harold. It was some of the work factors that I was dealing with that I wasn't prepared for. And again, that kind of goes into my burnout story. So these are many, many years, right, that I'm going through right now. And I'm just giving you these snippets, right? And there's many stories within these stories. So I experienced burnout on top of anxiety, on top of stress, not being able to cope with stress well, and severe work injustices. So I'm mending my relationship with Harold. He hadn't changed in all these years. Very afraid of living his life, very afraid of talking to people or going to work. He was afraid of going to work. He was afraid of being an OT, and he was afraid of being someone that makes really important decisions at work and being a clinician. He was afraid still of impressing people socially, and now the social anxiety component was less, but it was still, okay, we both had fear of, like, we wanted to live our best life on the weekends and party and still make great friends. But it was our mindset and attitude around these friendships, and our mindset and attitude around just work and life was cyclical. It was this nasty cyclical cycle of anxiety, burnout, just getting by, but really caring about how we look socially and all this stuff. So fast forward, press the button, fast forward. Many years after my burnout and healing from that, Harold and I really maybe talked every once in a while. Still there. Can't get rid of him. And when I moved to California now, I have been this whole year, 2018, I've completely have undergone some transformation that is not over by any means, but it's been the most transformative year of my life. It's like I woke up. And until you do that, you can't even imagine what that is. Waking up and transforming and having your soul align with your true self. That's what I've been going through this year. And I know, like, it's just starting. And I hope and wish that everyone can go on this journey and get woke. So in my year, right, Harold definitely was present, even though I've been realizing that, yeah, our friendship sucks, right? For the first half of my year, though, the first half of 2018, he was still pretty present. And I suffered. This whole relationship, he's like, like when you have a relationship where you have an obsessive overeater and then you have that person that keeps buying them the food, right? Harold keeps buying me the anxiety. So I get to this point in California where I've moved across the country. I've gotten more spiritual, I don't quote unquote woke, but whatever, you know what I mean. When people say that, I'm not even sure if I don't even know what that term totally implies. Okay. But in my awakening to my true self, I had a tough conversation with Harold. And I told him, I started to talk to him in a way I've never talked to him before. And this was just an open dialogue. This was just me thinking out loud. I gave him a name because up until this point, he didn't have a name. He wasn't even a person. Up until this point, Harold has been my anxiety. Harold's not a real person. But 2-ish months ago, I started to talk to my anxiety and I named it Harold. So this is not really a polished version of telling the story. And I didn't want it to be too polished because I'm speaking truly from my heart and from my own perspective, right, of this anxiety. I basically named my anxiety, okay? I named my anxiety. I personified it. And what that has done for me, no one told me to do that. In all the years I was seeing therapy, which was so helpful, by the way, I don't want to bash on it or anything, because all those years of being in and out of therapy has played a role in me developing coping skills, right? And this past year, I've encountered and experienced some pretty incredible things. And I've worked with a coach, an integrative health coach, Angie, by the way. I had her on a podcast episode many episodes ago, but if you want to listen to that, I don't remember it, but maybe I'll put it in the show notes. But I've worked with Angie, and I've really this year I've come into myself in many ways. So it doesn't surprise me that I self-generated this notion of let me name my anxiety, even though I didn't wake up and think, oh, let me name my anxiety. It just happened. Like, I was working on my work for Joy Energy Time. I'm developing continuing education courses right now, and I'm very, very much in my head, working at home, working as a solopreneur. Even though I have my husband, we're doing this solo, and I have many doubts all the time. Welcome to entrepreneurship. And my anxiety has been getting the best of me yet again. So this journey with anxiety, I've always tried to resist it. So when I had this little conversation, this little heart-to-heart with myself, particularly personifying my anxiety, the tables turned, everything shifted. I was viewing my anxiety with a certain set of sunglasses for this entire time since I was 16 years old. And it's like I just switched the lenses to a different color lens, and I'm viewing my anxiety as a part of me, because it is. But instead of battling it, giving it a name, giving it, even like I had fun with it, like a little personality, right? Like I named it Prince Harold. And I just came up with that. I don't know I can't tell you what that conversation looked like. It wasn't like something I planned. It was just something that developed and something that was downloaded into me somehow. I had never heard of people naming their anxiety. Now, I'm not saying this is like revolutionary, that I came up with this. I'm sure this exists. And you know what? Working with kids with emotional regulation as occupational therapists, there are emotional regulation tools that name certain things. Like, I can't think of them off the top of my head, but like superhero, blah, blah, blah. And the kids can, it's this technique that I have learned in continuing education courses for kids in terms of dealing with emotional regulation. But I have never seen this approach, at least in my experience, for adults with anxiety. There's going to be people listening like, I do this all the time with my clients. Oh my God, that's great, because I wish I had been doing this sooner. Because now, instead of me being with my anxiety like one thing that I cannot get rid of, it's like it has its own space. It has a name. I could be like, this isn't coming from me. This thought, like, it's in my voice, it's my thought, but this is my anxiety talking. Am I going to believe it? I have distinguished between what my soul is, who I am as Erica, and I know that anxiety is not me. That's a voice. That's something that I developed when I was a teenager. It has never been me. You are not defined by your labels. You are you, whoever you are, whatever your name is. That's who you are. Am I saying that naming your anxiety will cure it? No. Because actually now, instead of battling it and like being ashamed of having it and having identified with it so strongly, now I'm like, yeah, it's something I have, and I'm learning to live with it, and I'm learning to recognize when this anxiety is in me and being like, oh, thank you. Thank you for that, Harold. That was helpful, or that wasn't helpful. And I can also, it takes like this huge mindfulness component as well, because I'm like, instead of believing my thoughts on default, like I always have about my anxiety, instead of believing those thoughts, I can discern between these anxious thoughts that are trying to protect me, versus what's real. So this whole time I've described this relationship with Harold as toxic because all this time my anxiety has been trying to protect me from failing, from looking stupid when I speak. And it all revolves around speaking, whether that was in a social situation, whether that was at work, speaking with patients and treating like an OT does, and talking with parents. Whatever stage in my life I was at, that anxiety was manifesting in a way to keep me safe from the experiences I had before I was 7 years old, when I was being made fun of for speaking because I stuttered. Or, like, and when you're that young, you're not having this metacognition of like, wow, I'm thinking about what they said is going to shape the rest of my life. And no, like you don't think that. You're just a sponge and you're absorbing. And I absorbed from very early on that my voice does not matter and it is to be made fun of. And therefore, I don't matter. Like, going through this is pretty deep. And again, I've had tremendous help from therapists. Also recently from my coach that I was working with. It's been 2 or 3 years. 3 years of listening to personal development, self-help, you could call it, books, podcasts, consuming that constantly on a daily basis. So I have been cultivating my inner strength, focusing on building me up. That in combination with all the help I've received along the way, and just stepping into who I am, having to unlearn and rewrite who I am. Because what I picked up from very early on, those instances, those experiences, was this is who I am. I'm timid. I'm shy. I'm not going to talk. I'm afraid. I have anxiety. Rewriting that. So rewriting about 30 years, because I'm 30 years old now. Rewriting all of that and unlearning that doesn't happen overnight. And this little tool, has it stopped me from having anxious moments? No, because yesterday I was living, and I admit it, now I'm more aware of it. I was choosing, and it sounds so like I was choosing to be in anxiety yesterday. And because now I know what I can choose, right? What energy do I want to give? And I am a work in progress. We all are. So although this year has been the most transformative year, and I know this is just the beginning, I understand that, yes, I have these tools, but I have far from perfect days. And it takes practice and repetition to build these tools. Build your cognitive tools, build your resilience, build your confidence, right? It takes consistency, repetition. It takes courage. It takes commitment. I have gone through life and moved through, again, since I was 16, I have moved through many things from a place of anxiety. Like, that's where I chose to operate, whether knowingly or not. I was listening to those automatic default, the default of anxiety, the thoughts I had. And I made those connections in my brain stronger and stronger. And it took over a decade. And here I am, again, 30 years old, like unlearning that. So it takes strength. And what I'm saying isn't perfect. I'm not like sitting here talking to Harold all day long and having conversations with my anxiety. I would say that I can just catch it. I can catch it, and then I have a little bit of fun, and I'm like, oh, thanks, Harold. That actually wasn't helpful. That actually lowers my vibrational energy. That is not true. What is true? What's the best that can happen? How do I want to show up now? Do I want to show up every day from a place of fear? Do I want to worry about things? Because from what I learned in the past, worrying about things doesn't make things happen. In fact, you are putting out very low vibrational energy, and it impacts everything you do. It impacts your mind, it impacts your body, it impacts your experiences. This has been just an ongoing dynamic process for me of learning to distinguish between who I am as Erica from the lies that I've been telling myself for so long. And now I can look at it and be like, okay, this is just Harold. I acknowledge it. I appreciate it. You know what? Thank you. Sometimes I do. I say, thank you for that. Thank you for that anxious thought. That it's just automatic sometimes. And now I'm choosing differently. And the more and more I choose differently, the more and more I see differently. And I see possibilities and opportunities. It's not being blinded, but it's about who's in control here, the anxiety or you? So with that being said, I hope this was helpful. If you have anxiety, I want to hear from you. I want to hear what you've been doing, who you're seeing, whatever you want to tell me, just what your process is in dealing with anxiety. And I want to see if you've done this technique before. What techniques are you using that work for you? I think someone on my Instagram commented that she puts everything in an imaginary box. She puts her anxiety in an imaginary box and she gives it to God. So that's her technique that works for her. And I want to hear the technique that works for you. This is a place to empower each other with anxiety because it's not going to define us. This is a place where we can learn from each other. And I hope that me coming here and sharing this with you and putting this story in a different way, I'm still trying to find my voice in it, but I'm proud of myself that I was able to get uncomfortable and share this with you. Something that I was never going to share with anyone. And then I realized, hey, If personifying my anxiety has helped me in the past 2 months move mountains, quote unquote, mentally, but I have been able to move mountains and step into my power, like my power is back, then why would I keep that to myself? So I want to hear from you. I really, really want to hear from you. So send me an email, Erica, ERIKA, at joyenergytime.com. You can always send me a DM and you could tag me in your stories. We have a new Instagram for this podcast, Burnt Out to Lit Up. That's the Instagram handle altogether. It's a baby. It's brand new. We started it last week, but we really wanted to distinguish the Instagram, or we wanted to distinguish the podcast from Joy Energy Time. So you can still find me at Joy Energy Time, but now this podcast has its own home. So yay. So like I said, reach out to me. Let me know what you think, and we'll talk soon. Mwah. Bye.